Hello, everyone. My name is Hillary, aka Kay, and this is Kay's Cozy Corner. So, today we are going to be talking about Afrofuturist media and fashion motifs. But before we get into that, beverage of choice. I already had a tea today, so I'm now drinking some cranberry juice and lemonade. It's delicious. And let's get right into it. Okay, so we're talking about Afrofuturist media and fashion motifs. Let's start by defining some terms. So you might be asking, what is Afrofuturism? Afrofuturism is a term that was created by a man named Mark Derry, and he created this term in a paper in 1994. And he defines Afrofuturism as, quote, speculative fiction that treats African American themes and addresses African American concerns in the context of 20th century technoculture and, more generally, African American signification that appropriates images of technology in a prosthetically enhanced future. So that was a lot of words, and that sort of boils down to African American literary writers. He's mostly talking about literature. So, African American literary creators were writing things about speculative fiction that centers around the African American experience and what African American culture would look like in the future. Now, since Mark Derry coined that term in 1994, a lot of people have come up with their own definitions for it because, frankly, his definition is dated. And it's not really applicable today because we're in the 21st century, and it's not going to be applicable in the future because centuries just keep going. So, for this discussion, I have also created my own definition, and I define Afrofuturism as media featuring science fiction, fantasy, and futuristic concepts that imagine a world where blackness and its history are central. So, I wanted to include the black diaspora, which is why I just said blackness in general. And my definition is just saying, hey, black people create stuff that talks about black people's history and how we can reimagine the future or hope the future will look, where blackness isn't relegated to the sidelines but is instead centralized and loved. It's beautiful. It's an incredibly hopeful genre. One of the reasons why I love Afrofuturism as a genre, besides being a black person and loving to see black people, rooting for everyone black, it's a genre that really explores what if racism and bigotry and hatred were not there. That's not always the case in Afrofuturism. In fact, some of the things that I'm going to talk about are going to be specifically about discrimination. There are aspects of the genre that say, what if we can move past it? Which is real. Like, that's something that could happen. And it brings so much hope. It gives me hope for a future where bigotry is gauche. And if you are a bigot and if you are hateful, you are going to be in the minority and people are going to look down on you for that because that's ridiculous. And yeah, it's beautiful. It's a lovely genre. I do talk about fashion motifs, right? What is a motif? A motif is just a recurring detail. I first learned about this in a film class in undergraduate school, and it was a great film class. Shout out to my professor. And motifs are just things that repeat. You see them a lot, you hear them a lot. When I was doing my research, I saw, I saw a lot of motifs, but in terms of fashion motifs specifically, I saw six that I wanted to discuss, and those are metal, leather, Pan-African print, celestial bodies, technology, and dandyism. And I will define and talk about the significance of all of them shortly. This whole video is in connection with an essay, and in that essay, I go into much more detail about all of this, about the history of Afrofuturism, about the significance of each of these fashion motifs, and about the examples in media. So I will link to that in the description, so check that out. Okay, let's talk about the fashion motifs, all right? Metals have been used as fashion accessories, but they're not just for fashion. So they also signify people's wealth, their status in society. They can show whether or not you're married in certain tribes in Africa. And I can say this as a black person living in America and as a black person who is a descendant of chattel slavery, wearing things like grills and rings and hoops is a way to sort of show, hey, we might be oppressed, but we're still going to look good regardless. I think medals are some of the most fun motifs, and they're also incredibly prevalent just because you're going to see a lot of people wearing a lot of fun jewelry, and it's lovely. It's an amazing motif, and it really showcases the connectedness across the diaspora and also the longevity of black culture and black traditions. Next, we are going to talk about leather. Now, I'm going to focus on one aspect of leather as a black cultural statement, but there are others. I'm going to focus on the Black Panther Party. The Black Panther Party was slash is an organization that advocated for the rights of black people, not only in the US, but also in other countries. And I mean, frankly, let me just take a second to talk about how amazing the Black Panther Party was. They played a significant role in our healthcare system and in the fact that children could get free meals at schools, free breakfasts. So please do research into the Black Panther Party. They're amazing. And another amazing aspect of them, their fashion. So they had these uniforms that they would wear, and a semi official aspect of the uniform were their leather jackets. Now, they were decked out head to toe, gorgeous. The beret on the afro, leather jacket, black turtleneck, black pants. Sometimes they wore like military jackets or cargo pants. It was amazing. But their leather jackets were used to show sort of a militant but also counterculture vibe. It was used to evoke a certain feeling, not only of intimidation but of strength. And I love it. It's an amazing motif. Next, we are going to talk about Pan-African print. Africa is a huge continent, right? And there are people who live outside of Africa for reasons like the transatlantic slave trade and, of course, immigration that exists. And because of that movement and travel, people have created their own imitations or facsimiles of African print. It's important to note that, like I said, Africa is a continent. So within each country, there are tribes, and each tribe has its own fashion style. And frankly, if you really want to get into fashion, if you want to learn about fashion from different places, I would really recommend looking at African fashion and of course, don't look at it from like a big picture, like what is going on in the African continent. Look at it on a tribal level. Each tribe has their own type of fabric, dyeing style, cuts, so that's the way that garments fit on people, and their own patterning. And it's fascinating, and it's so vast. It's amazing. I follow a woman on TikTok, and I'll link her TikTok page in the description. But yeah, she's amazing, and she talks about the different patterns and cuts and all of that stuff from different tribes because she studies fashion. That's amazing. And so, for people who are outside of the African continent and people who might be a little further removed from their African ancestry, they have created sort of imitations or facsimiles of African clothing. And it's not quite applicable to any specific tribe. It's sort of just a mishmash of a lot of stuff. And it's a way to connect to a culture that you aren't quite a part of, but you still are a part of, if that makes sense. It's a little complicated, but it's a huge part of Afrofuturism. I mean, blackness is not defined by just one fashion style, and neither is Pan African print. And so it's amazing to see all the different variations within Afrofuturist media. Next, we have celestial bodies. Celestial bodies refers to anything that's going on in space. Okay, so whether it's like astronaut clothing or stars or space dust or planetary stuff, it is all celestial bodies. And that makes sense because a big part of sci-fi media is going to space. Now, I would say a big part of Western sci-fi media is going to space and seeing it as a conquest, right? We go to a place and we're trying to take it over and establish a colony and, do the imperialist colonialist stuff. But something that I find very touching and sweet about Afrofuturism is that space isn't a place for colonialism. It's a place for freedom. It's that frontier that hasn't been explored, and because of that, it means that it's a place where we might not be discriminated against. And that really touches my heart. It's so sweet to see space as like possibly a new home and a new place where you can be loved. Next, we have technology. Any sort of technological accessory you can think of is in this category, from the glasses that can do stuff to the rings that can do stuff. Sometimes they have watches that you can press and it pops up a hologram, all kinds of stuff. It's a big part of futuristic stuff to have fancy technology. I had to include it as a fashion motif because it's there, and it's there a lot. Finally, we have dandyism, which is something that I love talking about. Now, dandyism is, very simply put, dressing to the nines. It is when you dress so extravagantly. I mean, it's just doing it up big style. It's meant to be grandiose and big and fun. A lot of black dandies dress in really bright colors. It's gorgeous. It's fun. It's beautiful. I love dandyism. I think that it's amazing. And in the context of blackness, it really is an act of resistance to oftentimes be seen as the bottom of the barrel, and then to dress as though you are maybe the most important person in the room. It's confidence, and it's graceful, and it's strong and powerful, and I love it. It's amazing. Now, let's get into some examples in media. So we're going to start off with medals. And the first example in media I'm going to talk about is a music video by Missy Elliot, and it is Supa Dupa Fly. Supa Dupa Fly is, to me, set in a futuristic time and space. Missy Elliott is in this chromatic hallway, and she is famously wearing a trash bag. But beyond that, she's also wearing these gorgeous glasses and big earrings and gold rings, and she exudes such a confidence and fun energy in that. And so I had to include it in this because it 100% feels like Afrofuturism. The next music video I want to talk about is called Sad Girls Love Money by Amaarae, Moliy, and Kelly Uchis, three amazing artists. And in this, it's a bit more, I would say, cinematic, just because it feels more like a film. We enter in and we're in a futuristic city. There are flying cars, and then there's this huge building, and we have the artists' faces on there, and they're singing, and they're just decked out in jewelry. They're gorgeous. And we have one shot of Amaarae in the music video, and she is wearing so much gold jewelry. I mean, just top to bottom gold jewelry. And just like with Missy Elliott, she is exuding confidence. All three of these women are exuding confidence, and they are like central to this city. They are on billboards, they are the center of attention, and it is gorgeous. It's an amazing, fun, sort of sexy music video, and I love it. It's honestly one of my favorite songs, and I listen to it a lot. Finally, for medals, we are going to talk about a movie from 2023 called They Cloned Tyrone. Now, this film is about a man named Tyrone who is, you guessed it, cloned. He is a clone. And this film is sort of set in the 70s stylistically, but it is futuristic because I'll say this. I don't think they was out there cloning people in the 70s. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. If you are familiar with 70s style, it was a lot of gold. People had grills, gorgeous grills. They had chains. It's a gorgeously styled movie. And there was a lot of gold jewelry, and it was very gaudy, but not in a bad way. It was just big, bold, out there, in your face. Next, we're going to talk about leather, and we are going to talk about one of the most iconic pieces of Afrofuturist media that features leather, okay? Blade. The Blade film trilogy and the Blade comic series. Blade is about a black man who is a vampire hunter, and he is also part vampire. He has such an iconic style. He has a low tipper fade, real crop cut, dark black sunglasses, and he wears a long black leather coat. It sort of flies in the wind whenever he jumps down and punches people in the face. It's gorgeous. Sometimes he wears leather pants, and as someone who has worn pleather before, I don't know how he does it. Okay, pleather gets a little warm and with the leather jacket, but he rocks it. Usually in media, I feel like people love to reference Blade, and there are really two key things. It's that long black leather jacket and those dark black, those sort of tiny shades. That's a reference to Blade. It's an iconic look, and yeah, I had to mention that because Blade is another widely known Afrofuturist piece of media. Even though some people don't know what Afrofuturism is, if you know Blade, you know at least one piece of Afrofuturist media. So there you go. Now, onto Pan African print. There are, frankly, a lot of pieces of media that feature Pan African print. So I really had to narrow it down to three. The first one is another film that is very, very, very well known, and that is Black Panther. So the Black Panther film franchise and also the Black Panther comic series. If you don't know about it, it is a story that takes place in a fictional African country, Wakanda, and there is a prince who is the Black Panther and he fights crime. In the first Black Panther film, that was created by Marvel. Okay, anyways, in the first Black Panther film, the costume designer Ruth E. Carter was very meticulous when she decided on what pieces of clothing she was going to take from different very real African tribes in order to make Wakanda feel like it could actually be set on the continent of Africa. And so when you watch the movie, there are different aspects of Wakandan dress and their accessories that are from very real tribes. The next thing that I want to talk about is New Masters by Shobel and Shaf Coker. And this is a comic series about outcasts who are trying to live under the oppressive thumb of alien colonizers. Now, the authors of the comic series are Nigerian, and so the fashion styles of the books are an homage to the fashions in Nigeria. So that was beautiful. It's also specifically in Lagos, but they do also take some inspiration from other West African countries. The final thing that I wanted to talk about in terms of Pan African print is Sun Ra's Space is a Place. Now, Sun Ra himself, his music and his films are considered sort of a staple in Afrofuturist media and studies. He's huge. And Space is a Place was a 1974 film that is about a man, played by Sun Ra, who goes down to Earth and tells black people on Earth, hey, you can go to space and there's no discrimination there. And a lot of the way Sun Ra is dressing is inspired by ancient Egypt, and there's beautiful golden headdresses, and he has a staff that sort of looks like an ankh, and there's just a lot going on with his look, and it is gorgeous, and it's fun. It's a really fun movie, and it's a little avant-garde, and I love it. I love stuff that's a little weird. So, next, we are going to talk about celestial bodies. Now, Afrofuturism doesn't always feature space, but sometimes it does, and when it does, it's really fun. I want to talk about Parliament-Funkadelic. Their clothing and even some of their songs were very spacey. To me, jazz funk as a genre is just so space themed. To me, it just feels like this is what music on Venus or Jupiter would sound like. It is so otherworldly. Also, their outfits were groovy, baby. Very, very space themed. Now, there's a 2014 short film called Afronauts, which is about a group of Zambian people who are trying to beat the US in the space race. And they're going to send off this girl to space so that she can beat the Americans. And it's beautiful, okay? It's entirely in black and white. It's lovely. And I watched it and I cried. She lives on the moon, and that's all I will say. That's all I'll say. Now, the final piece of media that I want to talk about for celestial bodies is Brother from Another Planet, which is about an alien who crash lands on Earth, and he visually looks like a black man, and he's trying to navigate through Earth and unfortunately navigate bigotry as some white men are trying to hunt him down. Now, you might have thought, oh my gosh, you haven't really been talking about the fashion all that much. It's because most of the fashion in these three are a little bit more conceptual, and it's sometimes it's hard to really pin down celestial, but there are space themed pieces, like people wearing stars. In the case of Afronauts and Brother from Another Planet, they are space dwellers, so they go into space. They have their space suits and stuff like that. All three talk about how space is another avenue for exploration and hopefulness. And I love that. It's fun. Now we are going to talk about technology. Technology is everywhere in practically every single thing. So again, had to narrow it down. So these are the three. We are going to be talking a lot about Star Trek adaptations, all right? Starting off strong. Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Whole lot of tech there. I mean, we're on a freaking spaceship. And then the subsequent Star Trek adaptation, Star Trek Discoveries, both of these feature black people as super high level important roles. In comparison to a lot of sci-fi media, Star Trek is incredibly progressive. And I did want to talk about some of its subsequent adaptations because they really said, okay, well, what if black people were in charge? What if black people held important roles in the Starfleet? And I appreciate that. I love it. Now, I want to get into Far Sector, which is a comic series written by N.K. Jemisin. You might know her from some of her other books. I haven't read those books, but I've heard they're really good. Far Sector is a continuation of the Green Lantern series. This time, a black lady Green Lantern. And frankly, she looks a lot like Janelle Monáe, and I love that. And Green Lantern, I mean, they wear a space suit, and she has an AI who talks and wears clothes. So I would consider that tech. And also, almost everyone on this planet is sort of black, and I appreciate that because shout out to all black people. And it was so fun to see because I went into it knowing, okay, this is a comic and it's about a black lady who is a superpowered person with superpowered technology. And then to see that a whole bunch of people were black, there are a whole bunch of black beings here on this planet. I thought, OMG, wow, it's just a black party. I'm excited. It was fun. It's a great comic. It's fun. I love it. Finally, Iwájú, which is a TV series from 2024, and it is a British Nigerian kids show that is all about kids, and they live in a futuristic world, and they have cute little backpacks that are techy, and they have little wristwatches, and one guy even has a necklace. It glowed. It was a glowing necklace, so I'm pretty sure it did other stuff. But if you've watched the whole show, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, all of these examples are just really fun, mostly adorable pieces of Afrofuturist media. So if you just want to have a good time, I would really recommend starting with the technology section because they're so cute. They're very cute. And it's a bunch of people pressing stuff that should be an accessory, and then it pulls up hologram. Now, we have dandyism. And to talk about dandyism, I'm going to talk to you about Janelle Monáe. Janelle Monáe, visually, is dandyism, okay? Dressing in suits, dressing in tall shoes, with a big pompadour poof hair, gorgeous, fun. That's dandyism, baby. Janelle Monáe had an emotion picture in 2018. It was called Dirty Computer, and it's based off of the album Dirty Computer, and it is so fun. Gorgeous, beautiful, fun. They're in their suits, just looking absolutely incredibly powerful. I also want to talk to you about a comic book series called Bitterroot by some talented black people. It is about a family that goes and kills off evil, violent creatures while also having to deal with the systemic racism at the time, because we're in 1920s Harlem, bad time. But they wear very nice, beautifully tailored clothes. They look amazing. And although it's not set in the future, it's set in an alternative universe, which it's fantastical. It imagines, well, what if black people were central? So it doesn't break away from my definition. Both of these are so fun. Both of them aren't necessarily the happiest portrayals of blackness. They do get pretty sad, but you have to take the good with the bad. So, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this. It's incredible. I hope you learned something. And if you want to learn more about this, like I said, I will attach my essay that goes along with this. And yeah, hope to see you again. Bye.